On the continent of Aloris, in the vast green desert of the Malachite Wastes, floats really, an archipelago of 3 islands. The wastes themselves are desolate. They're not sand. They're miles and miles and miles of hills and valleys and dunes made from this green, blue striped stone, and in the center, this great maw carved into the ground, and above it, the 3 islands of the Malachite archipelago. No one quite understands how they stand there fixed in space, beneath the glowing green light of Solani Alpha, but it has been there such a long time. It's sort of just an accepted fact that the city itself has a life that keeps it standing there in the middle of the sky. Terrakeia, a city that stands larger than almost any metropolis on the continent, is atop the largest island, Phosphor, surrounded by smaller cities and suburbs. There's a smaller island that hangs not too far above, Heshael, which was the island upon which the archipelago was founded. When the Hesha wandered in the desert long enough and believed they had found their chosen home in this desolate archipelago, they created, for all intents and purposes, their promised land. And while Heshael was an island they claimed for their own, they as people in diaspora created this city as a refugee city. And while isolated and treacherous to get to, the city boasts hundreds and thousands of travelers and refugees from all over the world who have found a haven here in this city who welcomes all who find it. The last island, Flotsam, is quite a small island. Even you who have lived in this city for quite some time have rarely ever graced its shores. While some people in the archipelago travel back and forth between, but more than anyone, you find yourself a traveler between these communities in spaces that are liminal, but also very visceral, and in places that not many members of this community find themselves going. And amidst that all, where do you, Tio, find yourself waking up this morning in the Malachite Wastes?
Probably my apartment. Somewhere in or near Fayhaven, probably. They keep me close.
Could you describe to me a little bit about who Tio is and what he looks like?
Tio is Pendalan. So he is a humanoid red panda, small in stature, small in size. He's always got a little smile on his face most of the time, but a sharp, successful insight would see that his eyes just seem sad. He's lost the smile of his eyes for some reason. He's got a nice little apartment. It's not too big, of course. He is a small guy. Well furnished, not lavish, but it's decent. His mornings, he gets up, he makes a little coffee, he washes himself, gets ready for the day.
Makes me think of those videos of like raccoons when they're washing their little faces, they're washing their food. He's a cute little guy. You could definitely argue that.
He dresses himself in little trousers, a button-down shirt, typically sleeves rolled up to the elbow, waistcoat, little leather suspenders, and he's got a little what's it called? He's got a little flat cap that he'll wear, and when he's ready to face the day, he hops out to a little, I guess, like an attached garage.
When you step out of your apartment, Terrakeia is this city in the wastes that's something of an anomaly in what is ostensibly this huge city. A city where organic matter is as precious as gold, where nothing has ever found a way to grow naturally. Many people from the Feywild and their descendants have found themselves here in this diaspora and created their own haven, Feyhaven. Now in the wastes, The sun, the like classic sun, the star only makes an appearance once every 3-day cycle. And when you step out from your apartment today, that's that day. So the sun is glimmering brightly at the top of Fayhaven, down on all of its denizens. And when you look around out at everyone, it just seems a little bit brighter, just happy to be in its presence. The rest of the time, when Solani Alpha remains fixed in the sky, the city's bathed in this luminous green glow. It's still quite bright, brighter than it gets in the lower part of the city, the Undercity, than it will ever be down there. And the reason that most of those from the Feywild, or those from planes that are sunnier generally, have made their home up as far as they can get, it resembles proper daylight. You step out into this beautiful mishmash of a structure atop this malachite peak that has been carved with all sorts of divots and ruins and symbols into some sort of approximation of what these rocky outcroppings would look like if they were wooded area. Banners of these hand-cut leaves and flowers have been strung between apartments in this sort of illusion of a forest, where some people have attempted in little gardens behind their apartments to grow food or work on their druid craft and make a life from a place where there is no soil to grow such things. It's a city that's taken on its own culture beyond just the culture of pixies or fairies or shapeshifters. It is entirely of its own. As you step out from your home, you see not far from you a marketplace, bustling in the early morning with vendors. They're getting their wares ready for the day.
Stepping out of the apartment, I think Tio will feel the sun, just close his eyes for a second. He doesn't wear shoes. He's just got the little red panda Pete's. He'll ball his toes up a little bit under him and just...
You remember better than most, probably here, that feeling of fresh grass between your toes and that dappled sunlight coming through the leaves of your forest home. This is the closest place that you've gotten to that in many years, but on a day like today, it's almost enough.
Probably walk over to the market if there is either pastry or fruit, something simple, either just a croissant or maybe an apple or something.
You spot a booth that you're familiar with, a father and a daughter who are bakers. They've been busy all mornings. Their pastries, they come out of the oven in the back, fresh and hot, and he's a dragonborn, so they have that advantage. They can heat up their ovens right away. They don't need to wait for hours for it to get hot. They can just use their breath. Today, his daughter, Cassandra, is running the booth. She's, late teens, early 20s, and she sees you and she says, "Oh, hi, Tio, good morning."
Good morning, Cassandra. How are you?
Sun's out bright and early this morning, isn't it?
It is. It's a wonderful day, looks like.
Listen, I'll be honest. I do like the days when it's a little bit colder. It can get kind of hot in here on days like this, but I really can't complain. It feels so nice on my scales. It feels, like being in the egg again, I guess.
I wouldn't know much about that.
Oh no, I guess I don't imagine. Listen, we have your favorite this morning, and you see this little hand pie. It has the flakiest pastry you've ever seen, and there's actually some apples inside it, which again, it's quite unusual. Usually they might be meat or something else. As she says, "We only got a small batch this morning, so I did hold one aside for you."
I appreciate you.
And Dad said it's on the house. He really appreciated how you came to fix up the sign last week. You're always so good at fixing things.
Oh, well, it's really not a problem. I was here, I was by, I had nothing else to do.
But that's the point. You didn't have to do anything, and you did. It's really nice of you. This isn't a place, I love living here, but it's not exactly a place you're used to getting stuff for free,
Oh, well, it's not necessarily free. Now I've been paid for it.
Oh, well. She wraps it up for you in this little paper, and she says, "If you check upstairs with ink, He's got some nice little concoctions this morning. If you want to add anything to spice it up, between you and me, it's just fine on its own.
He'll reach into his pocket and pull out his crystal to see if he's got any fares booked immediately.
You know it's bound to come any minute, but you don't have any yet.
Then he'll put it back in his pocket and just, yeah, I might have a minute to do that.
Looking up sort of behind and above the booth, you look up into this, I don't know exactly how to describe it. I don't want to say a tunnel, more like a long impression in the wall, where Ink, who's this tiny black imp with a sort of oily sheen to his skin, he looks almost iridescent. He's got his tiny booth, and he's mixing up all these little potions and powders. He sees you, he goes, "Good morning, Mr. Tio."
Good morning, Ink. How are we doing this morning?
He goes, listen, I got some things that might interest you. I got some things that might be real helpful. And he pulls out, he's got this little powder, and he says, this one can make you go real fast if you want to go fast today. And there is nothing wrong with it. It tastes like vanilla, mostly. And it doesn't make you trip so much like the last one we tried. I know that one was a little bit trippy, but I think I got the formula right on this one. And this one over here, and you can see, he's got like this almost syrupy looking concoction. You can smell through the bottle that's really sweet. This one, it keeps you nourished all day, so you don't need anything else to eat. This will be perfect for you. At the end of the day, you are really, really, really hungry. So listen, if you have any friends who are like chickens or anything like that, you might not want to get too close to them at the end of the day, but other than that, there's nothing wrong with it. And obviously, we've got powdered sugar and jam and all that, but if you want to try something new, I will give you a discount. Only one silver to try something brand new.
I think we'll just stick to jam this morning, Inky.
Ink looks a little crestfallen. He's like, listen, I'm gonna get the recipe right eventually.
I have no doubt in my mind.
I have almost got it in hand, that tripping thing. Don't go spreading it around that it makes you trip, because it's not gonna do it anymore.
Absolutely not. My lips are sealed, sir.
As you look over this little kind of inlet where Ink's tiny shop is, you see amongst the potions and the powders, there are some little jam preserve jars. Not a lot, because mostly that produce is going to come in when the wastes get these deliveries that they can barter for. But Ink says, oh, I got some new jams from, you remember that girl who's always going around sticking her nose in things? Laurel, that's the one, always going around saying, oh, it's Fayehaven, we should make things nice, we should try and go gardens and stuff. Well, she told me I could have a few berries that she'd grown to start with if I just told people to go and use the community garden and work on their druid craft, So anyway, I got me some berries, got blueberry, I got some huckleberry, I got some blackberry jam. We haven't had that in ages and ages. And you see he pulls out these little jars, no bigger than a marble or a thimble, just enough for like one pastry, a single serving jam container.
Hey, that berry jam sounds very good.
He hands over the little bottle. He says, thank you so much. That'll be 5 copper, please.
All right. He will reach in his pocket, pull out 6 copper, put it on the counter.
The coins are almost as big as he is, and he pushes them into like a slot in the wall. He pushes each one in, and they fall down this kind of little shaft where they stack up, probably into one of those like wrapped tube of coins already, where at the end of the day, Cassandra downstairs can just hand them up to him in like little bricks. You take the little jam and the hot, fresh pastry, and the jam is good. And it reminds you of home. It reminds you of your mother, and you feel a little ache in your chest. When you first came to the city, you felt like that often. You don't feel that ache the same way anymore all the time. It's more of an underlying longing, but there's, more going on in the world now. When you take a bite of this pastry, what does it remind you of? What thoughts come to your mind?
I think of warmth as it's mulling over in his mouth, over his tongue, like licking some of the flakes off of his teeth, as you do with a good flake pastry. I think on the swallow, on the mouthfeel, and as it's going down, it's a warmth. It's a sweetness that calls back to being a child, trying to help mom make pastries in the kitchen, whether or not it was successful. But just that activity of icing accidentally everywhere or something.
You remember so clearly the day that you messed up your neighbor's garden and you went over the next day and you fixed it up. You actually even installed a little homemade irrigation system, something that she never appreciated to the day you left. She was always complaining about it. She was like, I wanted to water the plants myself. You know, there's just you can never please some people. And you remember coming home from fixing up the mess you'd made, the smell of those little blackberry pies that your mother had made for dessert because they're your favorite. And she never said anything about it, never, you did such a good job or you took responsibility, just each of them in a row with little scratches on top she made with her little claws. And you swallow, and that's what you remember the most, that treetop house and the warm kitchen and your mother. You head over to the garage. What do we see when we get into the garage?
Well, he opens the door, turns on the light, flicks it on, and I guess like the little malachite just dings on in the top. And you see this sedan. It's a 4-door car, mostly brass colored. There's some green on it that's kind of that green that copper turns. It's not oxidized copper, but it's that added evocation. Yeah, it's that evocation. It's mostly a copper color. We've got that green kind of lining in places, accents. From the outside, it looks like a fairly standard car, except there's not necessarily wheels. There are crystals of a sort, like levitation stones, embedded into the wheel weld. Yeah, he's probably hand painted like his own version of the taxi emblem on the doors, just so it's very clear that he is also a taxi. Mm-hmm. It's got the little light on the top, not necessarily says taxi on it, but it's just like a universal sign for this is a taxi. Yeah. When the light is on, you can request a ride. He'll walk over to it, put his hand on it, and just, all right, another day. Sun's out. Let's get to work, girl.
Right then you get a ding on your, I don't know exactly what to call it. It's sort of a sending stone adjacent item, a really beautifully carved, smooth piece of crystal. It's usually sort of a flat, iridescent colored, piece of rock, but it'll flash and light up when you get different messages. And when you answer it, it's kind of like FaceTime, that this little holographic image of the person kind of pops up over the stone itself, like an image on a screen. You can see that you get this little ping over from somewhere in the Adventurers Guild. So not too far from here, from Feyhaven, a sort of an adjacent peak of Terrakeia. Hephaestus Hall, the home of the Adventurers Guild, has always been a bustling place. It's a huge city, but it's a little surprising given the fact that the city isn't more directly connected to other places. It is very isolated in the Wastes. Many young adventurers from the Wastes get their start here. They're taking lower level missions. They're clearing out a poltergeist or helping the neighbors catch missing livestock, that sort of basic thing. But there are still adventurers who come from out of town for larger missions or get sent out beyond the archipelago into the Waste themselves and beyond. There are still dragons out there, not always just to be slain, sometimes to be aided, but somebody's got to do it, and it might as well be them for a good price. So you get a little ping, and you can tell that it's coming, over from Hephaestus Hall. It does just seem like it's coming from your regular taxi service, not necessarily something, and anything more than that.
He'll take a look at it, and All right, let's get moving. He'll open the door, hop in. His seat is like very specific, like bucket seat style. It's of course made to fit him. It doesn't look like this car was factory made under any circumstances. It was absolutely handmade. But for a handmade car, it does look nice. The dashboard is on his side of the car. It's all gauges and little screens. And he will step inside, press a button to start it up, takes his crystal and places it on the dashboard where one might put a like phone holder on your car in real life. Yeah. Except where there is no phone holder, where there is no crystal holder there, the dash opens up and a little automaton just kind of pops out. Mm-hmm. A little automaton, no legs, just kind of hovers on a single point. 2 arms, a little head, and it will take hold of the crystal and kind of pull it into the dashboard, set it down, kind of fix it in, and then just next to where the crystal is a larger screen, except instead of just being a screen, there are reliefs carved into it. So it looks more like a topographical view.
Oh,
it's a whirring of gears and plates and just little tiny glowing crystals inside to show you are here, you are going here. But that connects to his crystal when this crystal is inside the housing.
So essentially the phone has a point of connection, and then that crystal connects in and leads to an almost like 3D view of the city on the dashboard.
Yes.
And what's pretty extraordinary about this in particular is for all the magic imbued in it, the magic it takes to make something like this, it's not illusory magic. It's not like runes that are carved into the dashboard to somehow make it happen. It's in itself a feat of magical engineering that are these ever so slightly shifting plates and gears and like little set pieces that move in such an extraordinary way, but it's all physical parts. There's something extraordinarily like profane about it, something very of the world, not of ethereal magic, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And that makes it very unusual, not just for a vehicle, but for any kind of magical engineering to exist like this in Terrakeia.
And aside from that, there is a passenger seat up front, and the back seat is a like larger bench seat. All around the dashboard in most of the other places that are bare, there's going to be little trinkets, little figures, little like a flower in a vase that's just kind of hanging next to where the door meets the windshield, a little poppy that he's kept there, and it's got some sort of liquid in it, but just the idea that this poppy is still bloomed after having been cut. I don't really know how long it's been there. It's just there.
You got that flower before you came to the city, a long time ago. And for all intents and purposes, for as much as it's possible to be, the cut flower is still alive, or it seems to be.
And it's like he can't truly remember where he got it, but it definitely holds a significance. There are pinned to the ceiling right in front of him little notes and little pictures that have been drawn for him. A little bobblehead just to the right of where his crystal goes into the dash that sometimes the little construct in his dash will hang around and look like it's trying to talk to. The dashboard directly in front of the passenger seat up front is empty, just in case he needs to take a rider in the front. He doesn't want it to be too cluttered. directly above him, somebody has drawn like little bamboo stalks on a paper for him. And it's his ride. It's very personalized in that respect. He turns on the car and it just starts purring. It's not so much a loud rumble of an engine or a roar of an engine. It sounds more like gears turning.
I feel like I keep coming back to that kind of clockwork analogy. Like, it's something between an engine and this sort of ticking, mechanized, the clicks. Like, I know it sounds so basic to just keep going back to clocks, but there is something kind of soothing about it. There's something very intentional about a sound like that. It's not like a bomb ticking or something like that. It's much more kind of smooth. It sounds like something coming together. It doesn't take you very long, really, to get over to Hephaestus Hall. You know these streets by now like the back of your hand. And part of the reason is that taxis like yourself are some of the only vehicles, large vehicles, allowed in the city proper itself, outside of the highways. So you got bikes and motorcycles and those kind of things, but only the taxis are allowed to kind of drive in the streets of the metropolis. It keeps it from getting less congested, but even with that in mind, you seem to know routes that other cabs just don't, or they aren't able to get to for some reason the same way. You have a sort of knack for finding these hidden places and knowing the people who are all right with you using their back alleys or driving through private areas. You just kind of have a way with people, a way with the city, when you're in your taxi and you know, faster than you should be able to. You pull up in front of Hephaestus Hall and you see this grand columned marble building that you're now in front of. You see at the very top of the building these reliefs that actually go around the entirety of the perimeter, and you see there's like a dwarf that's carved and it's helping to forge a warforged and like fix its arm, and then the warforged is forging a sword and passing the sword to a human adventurer, and the human is helping a pixie get out of some kind of trap, and as the pixie gets out of the trap, it's pulling thorns out of the paw of like a lion person. It's all very symbolic. It's all very, we're all part of this greater good together, right? And the message is pretty clear that this city is built on helping one another, and the city will fall apart if we are not all working in service of one another. And you see, you've gotten there quite early in the morning. It's bustling. People are trying to get these higher level missions that pay better. And you can see there's a lot of younger kind of like adventurers in training, almost intern adventurers. They're outside, they're running drills, and there's an older adventurer who's there sort of commenting on their warm-ups and their form, making sure they're improving as they go. And not only that, you see like one kid runs up and he's got like half a set of armor on, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry I'm late. And the older guy kind of looks him up and down and is like, why would you show up here wearing that? You look like a slob. You don't look prepared. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to look unprepared. This is like, and he's a little embarrassed. He's like, this is, right now, it's the best set of armor my parents could afford. And the guy kind of like, he's pinching the bridge of his nose. And he's like, okay, 1 second. Like, we're going to figure this out. And he sort of, straightens him up a little bit. He actually takes like part of a shoulder guard off. He's like, okay, if you lose this, it looks a little more intentional. Like, it looks a little more like you're a rogue. So you could go in there, you look a little more cleaned up. He's like, yeah, thanks so much. And so it feels a lot actually like it's kids going to their first job interviews kind of thing that you're watching outside. Once you get outside, you see a woman with gray hair, kind of an older woman. So her hair's dark gray. It's still quite thick, but she's like a middle-aged. And she's got these big old glasses, cat-eyed style, that are bejeweled in some way. And you recognize this person as Esther Greenwood. Esther is one of the tellers at the Adventuring Academy, at the Adventurers Guild, and she helps to give out missions, mostly B-level missions that are kind of for younger adventurers, a little higher level, like they've cut their teeth, they've gone out a couple times, but they're not world-changing missions. They may have risks involved, and they pay better, but probably no one's gonna die on these type of missions, you know? You see her come over and she immediately says, "Oh, Tio, it is so good to see you. Thank you so much for getting here so fast. I really just have to pop in and pop back out, go downstairs for a little while. Is that okay? Can you help me with that?"
Absolutely. Hop in.
How does this sort of red panda-sized car shift at all to accommodate a human-sized person?
Well, I think it stays at a rather human-sized size as far as a car. Like, he's just got this smaller seat for the cockpit right behind the steering apparatus. But as she steps in, the seats will click and whir a little bit to kind of rise to meet her, just to make it more comfortable for her. As he switches little switches on the dashboard, and the whirring of the gyros and stuff inside will just rise into place to give her the most comfortable place for her to sit.
I will never get over that, Tio. You know, you are a clever young man. Has anyone ever told you that you are a very clever young man?
Oh, I've been told once or twice.
Once or twice? Wouldn't have happened to been me any of those times, would it have been?
It's a couple of times, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And she sort of makes herself comfortable. She actually sits up front with you. A lot of passengers sit in the back, but she's the sort of person who always wants to know where she's going, right? She says, "Son, I need to get over to the port and plug. God forbid these new kids do things themselves, but I got this new pack of adventurers. They found this lead. They're very excited. They already think they're like the new heroes of Terrakea. They always do. And they found themselves this lead at the port and plug, and they say they've apprehended a suspect and need me to come pick him up." I said, "I am not a cop, young man. It's not that kind of city." And I mean, we do need to get the proof if they want to get the yellow, you know, they did catch something. If they want to get paid for it, they need the proof, and they're on to the next thing already. So then you gotta run down there and do it myself, as though they couldn't. And she yells out the window at this. It's like, "You couldn't get one of these kids to do it." And all the young adventurers look at her with these wide eyes. It's like, "Yeah, I'm talking to you. You could get some on the field experience here." And she sticks her head back in the window and kind of gives this big "Tio, you would not believe the day I have already had, and the day has just started."
Oh, I believe it. I've known you for a little while.
She sort of looks down at the little automaton on your dash, and she says, "Hey, think you can find the fastest way down to the Loa City, little guy?"
The little construct will look away from the bobblehead it was trying to talk to and just nod its head vigorously. Little clicks from the springs and stuff inside as it just looks over at her, then looks back at Tio, and Tio will just tap the dash and say, "All right, you heard her. Plot us in." And it will give the tiniest of salutes and head back to where the crystal is embedded, and it'll just squeeze itself in and climb back down into the dashboard, and the mechanical map screen will whir to life.
That is so cool. And you see it sort of emerges from your dash. What is the map itself, with now the route planned out for you, made of? What does it look like?
It's made of plates and pieces of brass and other metals, to where it can be like it's made to be like a top-down view, but it can also be turned.
Yeah, it's almost like a 3D puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's this very cool thing of these plates shifting and clicking and whirring together in an almost fluid way to create this 3-dimensional map right on your dashboard. And you see a very clear path down the mountain from Hephaestus Hall, down through some of the upper city, and you know where you want to go, which is the lower city into the port and plug. And it's you know this area quite well now, but it is always nice to have this little luminescent glow, this little gold glow that charts past where you start and where you're going. And you know that you have it essentially magically in tune with the traffic of the city. So it's Google Mapsing you the fastest route. Sometimes it's the most discreet route. It's, you know, whatever you tell your little automaton, that's what it's gonna track down for you. Esther just kind of leans over to you and looks at the automaton and is like, oh boy, is he still trying to talk to that bobblehead?
Yeah, I was going to take it down a couple weeks ago, but he likes it so much.
He's a bright little thing, you know. You did a good job, but he's not all the way there, you know.
Well, I can make things. I can't exactly give super intelligence. And at the sound of that, a little head will poke back out from where the crystal was and go. And
Esther kind of goes, whoa, no, you are a very smart little guy, and I appreciate you very much.
Technically, he is the car. So he can hear just about anything going on in here. I know, Bess, I know. Get back in there, please, sir. And so he'll just pop his head back down in after just shaking it a little bit. You know, the little antenna on the back of his head has a tiny little bob on it that's a little heavier, so it just flops around a little, and he just goes back down into the engine. And while he's in there, the engine whirs a little faster so that we can get a move on.
And she's going to just talk your ear off the whole time. And she's talking about people who are coming in and they're looking for undead, which is weird because there's not a lot of undead in the city. And, you know, Natal Hammerstone's been coming in more often. The Hammerstone family is the one who actually founded Hephaestus Hall, and Natal Hammerstone is the one who planned and designed the Jeweled Gardens. So she's sort of in charge, and that's sort of annoying. She's been coming in more, and she's in charge of everything. And she's the sort of person who just, she has an opinion about everything, and she's going to let you know about all of them. It doesn't take long for you to pull in front of the port and plug, and in some ways, it's an interesting place. In some ways, it's completely a seedy dive bar. And on the other hand, it's like an institution in the city. It's this great round building with what looks like these carvings, almost of circuitry all through it. It has a kind of a luminescent blue-green glow coming from those carvings. And Esther leans over to you and she's like, hey, do you mind if I just pop in here? You mind waiting for me for just a second?
Sure, I'll keep the meter going.
And as you wait for Esther, you look out onto the Undercity, and it's a very common place for people with night vision to live, but also just anyone who wants to be away from the light of the sun, or even up close to Solanai Alpha when the sun isn't out. It's a beautiful part of the city, but it's very, very different from the upper city. If the upper city is more kind of solar punk, the Undercity is definitely more kind of like lunar cyberpunk, right? It's the alleys here, the streets are quite narrow. It's similar walking to the streets in Venice. It's winding. You can end up at these little dead ends. And the fact that your car can get down any of these streets is a bit of a miracle. But if anyone would know how to do it, it's you and your car. The lights down here are very different too. There's these sort of iridescent, beautiful blue-green fungi that grow along the walls. And you know, it's not as formal as it's been landscaped, but you can see that the denizens of the Undercity, the Undercity have guided it kind of in these waves, between the walls, on top of the walls. There are these little lights in between, like a lot of the alleyways have like string lights in between to help light the way. It's a very beautiful sight, but it's definitely would be really easy to get lost and lose your bearings here. You look out across the way and you see there a hobgoblin, this big, bushy, black-haired, red hobgoblin with glowing gold eyes, and he gives you away and he goes, "Hey, Tio! Hey, it's nice to see you out here!"
Oh, nice to see you too. You've been faring all right.
And you know Baird, he's always set up around here. He's the local hot dog man. He's got his little cart. He says, "Tio, you know, I've got just about every sausage known to man. You knew you were gonna come down here, and you've been stuffing your face with pastry? What is this?"
He just like wipes some of the flake from his face because he thought he'd finished it. And it's like, oh god.
Baird points like a big red finger at you. He goes, "Aha! Caught in the act."
Ah, yeah, you got me. I just needed something nice and sweet for breakfast this morning. I'll come back and grab another dog at some point.
And to Baird, that means now. So he's looking already in his cart and he goes, "You know, I've got something with a little spice to it. I've got something, I think this one might be a little more breakfasty if that's what you're still in the mood for. What are you looking for? You know I got everything, Tio."
Oh, well, I'm not exactly hungry right now. But I'll have to come back and grab something from you, sir.
I never know when you're being polite, but I know you'll be back here eventually, and that's the only reason I'm letting you go right now.
Well, it'd be kind of like me coming down and as me sitting here waiting for my ride. Do you need a ride right now?
He sort of folds his arms over his chest.
All right then.
Maybe I do.
Well, I'll tell you what. When I'm done with this fair, I'll come back down to see you. How's that sound?
He kind of gives you a little, almost a reluctant smile. He's like, I'll hold you to that. I don't know what your fare is considering if I can hold you to that, but I'm gonna hold you to that.
If all else fails, we'll catch up sometime. We'll have a drink. What do you think?
All right. As long as it's not, a little too dark and mysterious down here for you,
He'll reach up, flip a switch, and the front of the car, two little crystals just rise out of the hood, and they just light up to be headlights. And he goes, "I think I've got it covered."
And he's like, "Oh, hey, shut that off. That's right in my eyes, man. Come on."
And then I'll right back down.
And he sort of grumbles and he grabs his cart. He starts pushing it. He's like, "Hot dogs, get your hot dogs here." And he doesn't really have to be yelling because he's got like a sort of like a mechanical music box that goes when he pushes his cart.
Not sure how he got that.
Oh yeah, for sure. You've built this for him. Every once in a while, he will get bored and he'll want like a different version or a new song. And you're definitely the person who comes down and like swaps it out and fixes it and makes sure it stays in tune, because there are 100% neighbors in this neighborhood who have taken that music box and thrown it away. They're like, "I hate it. I hate those jingles." And he's like, "What do you not like my jingles? It's my little jingle jangles." And he picks these. He's like, it's the like do 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 do, and they're like, "God, it's killing me, Baird, please." But yeah, you're always willing to fix it for him. And, after a moment, it doesn't take long for Esther to come out, hop back into the car, and you're driving her back up to the upper city, and you notice that your crystal starts buzzing. You've seen it. You know this name. It takes you a moment, though. You see Kyrie.
Yeah, Kyrie is important. Kyrie is it's a call, I assume. Yeah. Go to reach to turn it on to try to take the call. If you'll excuse me for just a moment, Esther, and just try to press the button to take the call.
And just as you are about to answer it, you see you have another call coming, and you recognize it right away. It's the other kind of app that you have on your phone, on your crystal, just for a certain type of fare. And you know that it needs to be taken immediately.
Right. Like before pressing the button on the phone, he will, well, this one's rather urgent. Let me get you back to where you need to go. I'll get you back to Hephaestus Hall as soon as we can.
So you drive her up and make it back to Hephaestus Hall, and she actually gives you a full gold piece, which is, well over what the fare would have been. Very, very much over what the fare would have been. And she says, "You got to take it. You are everybody's favorite here at the hall, Tio. So thank you so much for doing this. You know that you have the nicest cab of anyone in town."
Well, I appreciate it. A lot of work's gone into it.
It's not standard issue, that's for sure.
No, definitely not.
One of these days, you're gonna have to tell me that story about how you got into this business, Tio.
One day, sure.
And there's a good chance she'll never stop talking for long enough to actually get that story from you. But you know that it's earnest. So she gets out, she kind of waves at you, gives you a wink, and you make your way right away toward another neighborhood in the upper city called the Marbles. And as you're on your way there, something strange happens, but not too strange to you actually at this point. When the car, it feels like it really quickly, like everything has been compressed into a vacuum. You feel like your chest gets tight, like it's being squeezed really quickly, and suddenly you are just driving down the street in the Marbles.
Oh, I hate when they do that. All right. He'll shake it off, take his hat and ruffle his ears a little bit and put his hat back on.
So you suddenly find yourself in the Marbles, which is one of the kind of more opulent sections of the upper city. And the upper city in general is definitely where a lot of humans and elves live, specifically high elves, summer eladrin, any kind of elves that would rather be in the lighter area of the city itself, closer to the sun. And most of the Marbles is built around one of the city's major tourist attractions. It's not like the Malachite Waste gets tons of tourists, but you do get some. And the Jeweled Gardens are sort of like the central park of the Malachite Wastes. It's really, really interesting specifically because you live in a city and in a desert made of malachite. This malachite's been compressed over hundreds and thousands of years, and there are mines not far from here, even mines within the mob, the kind of crevasse beneath the city itself, where jewels can be pretty organically harvested, I guess, mined, and grown by wizards who know the right type of, chemical compounds to do that with. And so this garden itself, with these trees where their trunks are made of malachite, the leaves themselves made of these paper-thin malachite that's been kind of, crafted out. The flowers made of rose quartz with ruby apples, and these beautiful violets made of sapphire. It's beautiful. It is absolutely stunning, glittering, gorgeous. But the value of any of these given trees in this city is nothing compared to an apple tree or a birch tree here. Now, the true source of wealth, the ones you can tell, the families who come from real means, are the people who have their own private, genuinely organic gardens. There are people here, and you can see in the distance the house of Natal Hammerstone, and her yard is full of lines of evergreen trees. On almost every time of the year, there's a dusting of snow in the yard and over the pine needles themselves. And if you look, once in a while, you can even see a heart, like a silvery white heart, darting through the pine forest that they have in their yard. And there's this very open rumor in the city, I guess more of a gossip in the city, that Natal's wife, Sandrine, who is a winter eladrin, and Natal adores more than anything. There's this rumor that Natal was so afraid that Sandrine would miss her home and want to leave and go back to the snow, that she had this forest of like a great fortune imported and magically sustained this forest all year so it could be winter for her there all of the time. And the way that people talk about it, like for some people it's like, oh, isn't this romantic grand gesture? And other people are like, yeah, man, Natal is whipped. So it's definitely, it's a choice, right? And as you watch, coming toward the cab, you see like a little pink-haired halfling trudging down the streets, and like it definitely looks like she's like having a walk of shame moment. She's carrying her little heels, and she looks at the cab, and you can just see this massive relief on her tiny shoulders as she starts heading for the cab. It's really actually quite unusual that she is not Faye herself. And to see you and have this kind of reaction, that's a little unusual in of itself. Like, she knows something, right? And she sort of comes over and knocks on your window really politely, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so relieved to see you. I've been calling cabs all morning and no one's been in the upper city. How did you even find me up here?"
I got an alert, and just kind of motions to the phone on the dashboard, saying someone was in need.
And you can see when she understands what's going on, she looks very embarrassed. She immediately looks kind of stricken and is like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I really appreciate you coming out here. I'm really sorry they made you come all the way out here. It's such a pain. They can be kind of bossy, can't they?"
Well, a little bit. And he doesn't really say a lot more on the subject. He'll just reach up and like click a few switches on the dashboard, and through whirring of gears and spinning of gyros and clicking of metals, the cab will condense, like panels will recede into itself, and it'll just get a little bit smaller to fit, basically just enough size to fit small creatures, as he himself is about the size of a halfling. So the back seats and front seat will be the appropriate size for these small folk.
And you see she sort of tries to get in the back, and then she ends up sort of laying down, and she's like, "Laurel must have been really worried." And when you have a ride like this, you don't even have to ask where they're going. It usually just says. So
Gotcha. You
can see it immediately charts the route back up to Fayhaven, and you're headed back that way now. And you just start heading back. You hear from the back seat, "I'm so sorry. This is really embarrassing."
You've got nothing to be sorry for me. This is my job.
"Yeah, but it's not fair, because I know this is your job, but I also know maybe when you're sick a bit, and like you might, and I'm just really tired, and I just don't feel good."
You're feeling sick? Do I need to take you more to like a hospital or something?
She looks at you and she's like, "No, I don't think so. I don't need to go to the hospital. I'm fine. No, I don't."
All right. Can I do like an insight or like medicine check or something, just to like look in the rearview mirror and be like, "Hey, yeah, medicine," or
Insight check.
do an insight check from here. Say 15.
So you can tell, like, she's really, really hungover. And if she might not be telling you everything that happened last night, and if she feels bad, it seems like it's probably more because of that and like inconveniencing you than the fact that she's like really ill or something like that. It just seems like she's hungover and upset and weepy. So you're driving her back, and she sort of looks at you through the rear view mirror, and she's like, "Do you really want to be doing this? Like, do you want to be doing this?"
Well, I enjoy it. I enjoy driving around, and I enjoy talking to people and meeting people.
And she's quiet for a moment, and then she kind of looks, and she meets your eye, and she says, "Laurel says they tricked you into doing this."
Well, and he kind of feels himself seize up a little bit, trying to talk about it, and like his teeth just kind of grit a little bit. "I was doing it anyway."
And she just falls asleep in the back of your car.
And he just, "It's not your fault, dear heart. It's not your fault." And just keeps driving.
So you finally reach the base of Fayhaven, so kind of at the base of where almost the tree-like structure begins, not nearly as far up as you guys live. And you see a pixie waiting for you. She is about your size. She has these beautiful iridescent green wings, and she's kind of got them tucked down. So she's got like a little green shawl, like a sweater or a cloak that you can just see just the little bit of her wings tucked into that. And she has rich, deep brown skin. You can see on her face has like these little gold freckles on it. They almost look like gold flecks, and all down her arm she's got these little freckles, and then long, dark, braided hair down her back. And she's looking a little nervous. It looks like she's waiting on you. And when you stop, she comes hurrying up to the window and she goes, Winnie, did you bring my friend Winnie back?
As I pull up, and I stop, the back door will just open.
And you see her just go, oh, Winnie, honey. And she gets back there and she's just helping her out of the cab. And for all Laurel's tininess, she's very small. She definitely seems to be supporting this little pink halfling. Like, it does not seem too much of a struggle to support this person who is larger than her, as she kind of helps Winnie out of the cab. And she kind of looks at you and she's like, oh, Tio, I'm so sorry. We called. I'm so sorry about this. And you recognize this as Laurel. This is Laurel Mosswing. She is a very big figure in the young Fae community. She was born here in Fayhaven, and to her, Fayhaven as a community is like her entire life. She's huge on advocacy. She's huge on cross communication with the now reopened Fae realm. She's a community organizer. And in terms of especially trying to form community after diaspora and then reconnect families and things, she's very big on that, but she's also very big on we as Fayhaven have our own culture, and that's very important to her. But so that's where you would recognize her from. She's very vocal in the community, and she's got, she helps Winnie out. She's got her kind of propped on her shoulder. She does her own little medicine check, does her once over, and just sort of sighs and she actually has quite a similar response as Winnie. She's like, Tio, thank you so much for getting Winnie. I am so sorry. I really, really don't like to use this. I don't approve of it. But I was really scared. I hadn't heard from Winnie all night. She didn't come home last night. And then, I heard from her this morning so early, and she was stuck, and I would have gone and got her myself. But I just know with this call thing, you can get there so much faster. And I'm really, really grateful, but I'm very sorry. I did not mean to take advantage.
You're all good, Laura.
She says, listen, and she runs over, she sort of bundles Winnie up and gets her on a bench, really nice and comfortable, and just, with an eye line. And she comes back and she leans against the window, into the window, and she says, listen, this is a really sensitive topic. I know you've probably had this conversation before, and I don't know if it's something you're super comfortable talking about, or you even can talk about completely. But I have been talking to some of the other members of the young Fae here in town, and we've all agreed we really would like to advocate for you getting out of the arrangement. We all know it doesn't take an idiot to figure out what happened, and we all understand that it wasn't right the way things went down, that it wasn't consensual. It's really unfair that you're put in this position, and and she kind of sighs and she says, I understand Juniper's fear. I think to live here and not understand would be unfair. And I think that, my parents they were refugees. There are probably different people in the community who feel different ways about it. But the pact is one thing. And what you have done, you've so gone beyond. You've so proven that you are part of this community. You know, the pact keeps us safe and it keeps you here. It doesn't mean you have to go out of your way to be so kind to everybody and help everybody. And you've done nothing but show kindness to everyone in this community, even though maybe this community's done you wrong. And, you know, like, maybe that means that I need to take personal responsibility, and you know, like, if everything changes and it turns out you're like a psychopath or something and none of us knew about it, like, that's on me, you know. And so this is kind of like a manic laugh of the person who's like, I don't know how to end this conversation, like, I'm a little nervous. But like, you've done nothing but show so much love and sense of community, and I want you to know how much we see that and how much we all care about you, and that we see you, Tio, and that we want you to be able to live your life the way you want to.
Throughout the whole time of her speaking, he's just had like half of a smile on his face. That's just one of those, yes, this is polite kind of smiles that definitely doesn't reach his eyes. His little brows are like angled up in the middle, and the whole time she's talking, he'll nod his head and keep his smile. Like, his eyes are definitely misty on this. But as she says that they've definitely noticed, well, I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear you think so highly of me.
Laurel looks at you really seriously, and she's like, Juniper and I don't always agree on how things are done, but I know we both care about this community a lot, and I know deep down that Juniper values you. Obviously, it's a weird, fucked up, old school way of showing it, but like, Juniper values you, and I think this is going to be our year. Like, I think we have a really good case. I think if we go and do all the, you know, show all the right reverence and do all the kind of solemnity of it properly, and we go into it with all that kind of formality and don't offend them. I think this is the year that we're going to do it. That we're going to be able to make them understand.
I appreciate you, Laurel. I'm going to do my best to not get my hopes too high, but to go home, at least for a minute, would be very nice.
And you see her sort of look over all the trinkets on your dashboard, and you see her, as she looks over your dashboard, you see that Laurel understands intrinsically what is going on. She understands the system of bartering for the things that you need and handing off something meaningful, that these trinkets that are the payments themselves, that litter this dashboard, are all these little relics and trinkets of all the different rides that you've taken in Feyhaven, and things that the community has given to you as a payment that has a symbolic, if not a literal, value to it. And you see that she understands this system and she values the system, and also you see a little bit of a disappointment in her. You see this kind of sadness at, like, this is a city. This is a modern city that works on money. It's a city, the type of bartering that you do might be fine in Feyhaven, but it's not going to necessarily help you in your day-to-day life. And that's a really difficult thing for her to be grappling with. You could see it in the very conversation that you were having before this, that she understands the culture. She understands the tradition. It is dear to her. It is her culture. And she also understands how imposing this on you has been, like, not only, but that, like, it doesn't track in this context. It doesn't apply here. It's not just that it's asking you to obey someone else's traditions, but it could be actively keeping you back or harming you, that you aren't being paid for this work in that way. And, you know, she hands you your fare in actual money. She pays you some silver pieces for the fare, and she says, you know, I just wanted to let you know that the community garden that we are starting to build is actually going really well, surprisingly well. I know we've talked about this, and I know you can do a little druid craft, but I remember you were telling me, you know, you're welcome anytime, but I remember you were telling me that you and your mom sometimes used to bake together, and I know this is a little stupid, but there's not a lot of them, so, like, don't tell anybody, sort of. And she kind of hands you this little burlap sack. You can see that the bottom is stained a bluish black. And you remember from your conversation at the bakery earlier that the community garden has been trying to grow berries and fruit for the first time. And what you see is she's given you this little satchel of fat, black, beautiful blackberries. And she gives you a smile and she sort of says maybe sometime you could come over and show me how to make those little blackberry pies your mom used to make. And you see in this gesture, that is her idea of the transaction, right? That I give you the blackberries and you show me how to bake a pie. That's the kind of transactionality that she sees as being both cultural and useful and, part of building this community together.
I think as he takes the bag and she says blackberries, his ears will perk up a little bit on the outside of his hat. And he will almost scramble, trying to hold himself back, but he'll almost scramble to open the bag. And just as he looks inside, his fur will just kind of poof a little bit, around his collar. And he'll wipe away a tear and say, I think that sounds quite nice,
And she just beams at you. And you can see in this moment, in a way that's almost with your own, this kind of almost an unlocked memory of watching your dad interact with people and that charm and charisma that he just had that made people kind of like him. You see this in the moment, this Fae charm, exactly how dazzled someone might be. And the beauty and charm of the Fae that having worked in Fae Haven as long as you have, it's almost second nature to you. There's kind of these elements that don't quite work on you anymore, but just this, partially it's because, Laurel is so beautiful, she's gorgeous, but there's this real happiness and you can see the joy of being able to make you happy just radiating through her. And it reminds you, kind of this little pinprick of something you remember from a long time ago. And she sort of waves and says, take care. I'll be around later if you want to say hi. You know where to find me. And she kind of gestures over, not far from where you live, actually, to it's again, there's a little memory of home, if that, where you lived up in the trees and all these treetop houses, the kind of brick and cobblestone buildings were on the ground. And much like that, all of these little Fae dwellings are kind of more in the, for lack of a word, suspended higher up. And there's this little tavern. It's actually very close to the way station, the portal in and out in Fae Haven. So it makes sense, having a bar outside of an airport. And the Wayward Inn is just, it's a lot like how when you were back home and everyone used to sort of go to the tavern after work and that's where they would socialize. It's very much like that. So if you do, you kind of might understand now, oh, this is maybe where I recognize this person from, because Winnie is the owner and the proprietor of the Wayward Inn. You might recognize her more. For people who haven't lived here as long as you, they might just assume Winnie's a bartender there, because that's where they tend to tend bar. How often do you think you've been in the Wayward Inn?
I mean, depending on how long Laurel has kind of been advocating, if this was something that Laurel picked up on as soon as it happened.
Yeah, that's a good question. How long do you think you've already been here in Fae Haven? How much time have you been here?
I mean, at the very least a year, probably more. Yeah, 3 or 4 years would be appropriate. But maybe if Laurel had picked up on what had happened early.
Yeah, Laurel is very involved in the community, so she probably knew within months what had happened.
Then maybe she suggested I stay there, because if she knew Winnie at that point, that might have been where essentially he was staying until he got an apartment. Or maybe Maybe that was staying until where he was staying until Laurel convinced Juniper that he needs an apartment. So he probably at least has been in there frequently, especially with it being in that neighborhood.
So you see Laurel bring Winnie back to the inn, the place that might have been your home for a little while here. And she looks over her shoulder and gives a small wave at you and goes inside. And then you notice your crystal is blinking with sort of like a missed message or a call.
He'll just kind of snap back and go to press the button on his phone now that no one's in the car to see if there's like a voicemail or anything, or if it was just a missed call.
You see there is a voicemail for you.
He goes to press the button. Little Bess, the automaton, just kind of pops back up on the dashboard and kind of puts his little hands on over the edge of the crystal and be like, yeah, we're gonna cue it up and see what this is. And he'll press the button.
And you see in this little kind of image that pops up over the screen of the crystal, this little red panda person. And she looks a little older than the last time you saw her. Not much, just been a couple years, but she's probably a couple of her like little around kind of the mask of her eyes, a little bit of her fur started to go a little bit, just a tiny bit, a few gray hairs. And you see she's wearing a little pair of glasses. And you look at her a bit and she goes, "Hi." And you hear in the recording, the place where she would have addressed you by name sort of buzzes a little bit. And you actually see in the message itself, when you see her, she like looks a little confused for a second, as though like she heard it too, or something happened where the place where your name should have been when she had said it, something strange happened. And you see she goes, "Sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know why it took me so long to call." You have talked to your sister Kyrie a few times since you've come to the city, only once or twice, and on both occasions, it has been that similar thing, like both of you wondering, like, why did it take me so long? Why did it take us so long to talk to each other again? But unlike her, you know why.
As soon as she's on the screen, his demeanor drops. He officially has tears rolling down his fur. He's sniffling. He's nostalgia, I guess, is the right word for it, and a deep longing hits him hard as he just sits there and listens to her and winces when she tries to address him but can't.
She says, sorry, well, hi. Just wanted to let you know, remind you that Dad's birthday's coming up. It's 90, so it's a big one, a nice round number. Middle-aged is approaching fast. And, well, I know how much Ma and Pa miss you, and, I know they would really love it if you could come. So, yeah, I just wanted to let you know, I wanted to invite you, and, oh, I don't know if I told you. So Odette and I are adopting. He's a sweet, sweet little boy. Just barely, he's not even quite a cub yet. And we're gonna name him Deacon. I just think that's a pretty name, don't you? But we're hoping that everything will be set by the time Pa's birthday comes around. It's only a couple months from now, and we understand you've been too busy to, come home and visit, city living. But maybe you could take a little time off, maybe even a week or two. We miss you terribly, and we'd all love to see you, if you can. So yeah, love you. Bye. And the message ends.
As the message ends, I think he just finds himself gasping at everything in it. there was a happy moment, a happy little breath in from the announcement of an adoption. Does he recognize the name? Does he know this name?
It's like searching for a word you can't remember that's on the tip of your tongue. You remember, you try and picture it in your head, you can see it for like a blink of a second, and then it slips away. There is a deep ache in your chest. You know it's important. You know you're supposed to know it. But as you try and pull it right now, you can't even remember her son's name.
Like the second she says the name, it hits his chest like a stone was thrown at him. But as you said, he immediately can't tell you what it is after that. But he knows it was an important name. It was maybe a grandfather's name, or he tries to shake it off. And as she starts talking about their father's birthday, it like reconnects in his brain. Right. She's my sister. And with every word she says, more tears well up until they just spill. And the thought of his father's birthday, he knows he's missed so many. And by the end of the message, he's just white-knuckling the steering mechanism and just openly weeping in his car on the street in Fairhaven.
It's not long before you get a ping on your crystal that you've got another ride.
Is this the regular app, or is this the other app? He wipes his face as much as he can and ruffles the fur under his eyes to try to get all the salty wetness off, and he'll just do a little breathing. It's shaking. It's unsteady. All right. Are you ready, Bess? And the little automaton will peek out from behind the crystal and just. He looks a little sad too. His eyes are twisted to where they're kind of angled up in the middle, but he just slowly will nod his head, and the little antenna will bobble back and forth. All right. Well, plot us in, would you?
This is actually quite a long drive, a long fare. You're driving out to the suburbs, so out of the city proper, and you have some time alone with your thoughts. As you're driving out into the flats in this car that you and your father built together, what are you thinking about?
Remembering snippets of memories. It's not as though the memories are fully gone, but they're hard to hold. Remembering a sense of secrecy with tools and old spoked wheels and a hole in the floor, a large one big enough to fit a car. It was a car, and it was important, but it was also an important secret, and it was just for them. And there was a sense of knowledge, a sense of gaining a knowledge, gaining a proficiency, and more secrets. But this time so important that it was a different secret. Needing to gain more knowledge, but a secret with sister, not father this time. And it was important and shiny and magic, and more tears are falling, and he's gripping the steering mechanism now while he's driving, just trying to force this memory to come back into full view. And
roll a wisdom saving throw for me.
That's a dirty 20.
On that 20 wisdom saving throw, I think part of you realizes that even though you can't remember that those memories are sort of living right outside on the edges of your mind, almost as though it's like ADHD brain times 1,000. You wouldn't know how to pull it out of nowhere. They're truly out of sight, out of mind. When Kyrie's called and mentioned these things, and you're focusing on remembering, and you make this save, something is finally pushing through the cracks that have been placed so you don't remember as well. And you remember building this car with your father, keeping it a secret from your mother, and it's so modern and exciting. And you don't even have roads in your town at this point that cars can drive on. You remember wanting to learn more about magic and the technology in the bigger cities, going with your sister. You remember working for Lewis in the garage, and that awful, terrible fight that your sister and your parents had, where your sister left and that your mom and your sister didn't talk for ages. And you remember staying longer in your little village than you really wanted to be, because you wanted your family to make sure that they knew you weren't running away. And how excited you were to be finally going to the big city, to finally get out of this small town and bring all of those things you were so excited back to your home and to your family, and remembering that's not what came to pass.
I think while remembering all of this, the little automaton, little Bess, climbs back into the dashboard, goes back into the engine, and just for a moment pulls on a bit of a wire, pulls on a bit of a lever, and kind of like he's allowing the engine to make more noise, and just the low roar of this engine blasts a memory back into his head of hearing the first time the car that is still in the hole under Dad's workshop, tucked away, the first car that they kept secret from Mom, kept secret from all the siblings, the first time they saw it, the first time they worked on it. And then after all of the fights and after all of the other secrets of him getting the job with Louis and bringing back pieces and parts and knowledge, the memory that hits him like a bus is just the sound of that engine turning over the first time. And he has to pull over for a second. And when he pulls over the cab, the little automaton pops his head back out, and he'll just reach up and put him in his hand and bring him close and just hold him and weep for a moment. And he'll say thank you, Bess. Thank you for bringing that back. It's important,
And Bess, wraps his little automaton arms around you as best he can. He doesn't entirely understand, but it doesn't need to have a supercomputer for a brain to know that this is an important moment, and it's important to be here for you and to know that you are loved right now.
And because Bess is the artillerist cannon that Tio has made as an artificer, this particular cannon is the protector. So the little bob on his antenna glows, and, for game purposes, that just, it's a little positive energy burst that gives temporary health. But it just bolsters him enough to, he sniffles and straightens himself up, and he puts Bess back on the dashboard right next to little bobblehead, and you're right. We've got some work to do. Let's get back to it.
Roll me a d12.
2.
Okay. Well, it is still quite a busy day for you. You take 12 more rides before the day is out. The fare that you're currently on, that you have driven out, you pick up this massively tall, kind of mauve red, but like a pinkish red illithid. And you've picked up illithids before, but you remember this one because he absolutely insists on being called the captain. Like, his name is Reginald, but he insists on it. And you drive him up to one of those like insurance bureaus kind of in the mid-city. You pick up a Fey woman at one point with long, dark hair who pays you at the end of the ride in a strange silver locket that you cannot seem to open when she leaves the cab. You pick up a man, a satyr, who's got these sort of long, curly ram's horns, and you can see he's got a little bouquet of like fabricated flowers he probably got in Feyhaven, and he's like sort of nervously adjusting his hair, and you actually bring him to the Jeweled Garden, which you know is a very popular date spot.
As he's getting out, Teal will reach into his pocket, pull out a tiny little notebook, just a tiny little like leather-bound black book, and he'll just flip a couple pages, look out at the satyr walking away with this little fabricated flowers, and he'll just like wiggle his nose a little bit and cast druid craft to make flowers blossom a little bit more, add a couple of extra petals to some of the flowers, and just kind of nod and silently wish him good luck.
He sort of startles when you do this and looks around kind of confused, and then looks back and gives this really grateful little smile. Because this is a proper rarity around here to see these little like actual blossoms kind of spring up in his like crafted flowers. And he walks away. And so you actually have like a decent amount of non-Fey fares today. So you're being paid in like silver and copper pieces or in credits, more so than usual probably. But you do also have some Fey that you travel about. You get a fare from an old Fey woman, and she looks ancient, so you know she must be very, very old. You are bringing her up to the gateway, and you know that this portal to the Feywild has only been open for the last 10 or so years. And you actually get to see this sort of family reunion. It's kind of amazing. There's like some slender, tall, kind of young elven-looking figures who embrace her, and you see them all weeping, and you don't know, like, that could be, you know, sons or grandchildren or daughters, and it could be, for all we know, her parents, who have been in the Feywild and closer to the magic that keeps them immortal, whereas being away from the Feywild might do more to age you. You don't know. But she gifts you this like filigree crown of jewels. She is so grateful that you've brought her here. You give a ride to a Fey who is a young girl, or who looks like a young girl, who gives you a book that the pages glow with a purple light when you open it. And then there's just, you know, you get your party girls and boys and theys, especially when it gets night, who want safe passage from the Undercity and back. The majority of your business picks up as the sun begins to wane. And Terkay is not known to be a particularly dangerous city, but it's a city. Things can happen, and your priority always has been, and your imperative pact has been, to keep your passengers safe, especially your Fey passengers. What do you think has been your most interesting interaction, or like the strangest fare or person that you've had in the cab today that sticks with you?
I think this might be the first time that he's tried to transport a Loxodon. So he pulls up to a fair, and it's this big elephant man, and he's like, "Oh, it's a very tiny cab," and he'll of course click all the switches, and he'll maybe turn some levers. He'll even take out from his belt. He's got a little like toolkit on his belt, and he'll just take out this little sonic screwdriver thing and stick it into the dash, and it'll
give me a tinkering check, please.
Yes. Was there anything else to add to tinkering?
Yeah, you're going to add your proficiency bonus. So I believe with your expertise, it's a +4, and your dexterity as well.
Okay, gotcha. Nice. So that will be a 32.
Wow. Okay. So with a 32, you got this Loxodon man in a suit. He's taking a meeting out of town, and he looks a little bit like he kind of scrutinizes it. He's like, "Oh, I'm not sure if this will work." And you sort of make these little clicks with his checks, and even without a ton of extra effort, you've never made the cab this big before, but it unfolds in this series of clicks and clacks and ticks that the metal just kind of unfolds like from these secret compartments in your car with this ingenious mix of like artificing and like true blue magic of like pockets of hidden place. You make the car big enough to fit this Loxodon man. He kind of looks at you and he goes, "That's quite ingenious, isn't it?"
And I think the little automaton, little Bess, comes out of the dashboard just going, like, not breathing, of course, but just like physically. Oof.
The Loxodon briefly mistakes the little automaton for like some kind of mouse and kind of recoils, and then, he takes out this little pair of spectacles and really leans in. He goes, "Huh? Well, that's quite an interesting little gadget there. It is going to stay up there in the front seat, yes?"
Yes, sir. He's going to stay right up here. His name's Bess. He's just my little turret, my little defense turret. Yeah. And Bess will just light up that little blue, that calming, protective aura will just come out over the cab, just to give him a little bit of a reassurance as well.
He leans forward, and kind of says, "You seem quite at home in this city, young man. If you were only in town to visit for a day or two, what is it you might do when you were here? What would you recommend I see?"
Well, if it were me, I definitely think the Jeweled Gardens are worth a visit. It's still one of my favorite places to drive by, though it does Jeweled Gardens. It still makes me think of home sometimes.
And where do you call home?
I'm and his brow furrows a little, and it was a veil of trees, dirt roads, more like paths, organics, houses and trees, leaves and grass and flowers, and he just pauses, trying to think of the name of the place.
He kind of looks at you and he goes, "I too have not seen my home in quite some time." Sort of gets a little wistful. He says, "I remember the dust baths of my childhood, playing with my brothers and sister and mother in the river. They say a Loxodon never forgets, but I find myself forgetting once in a while in my old age."
I empathize on that, sir.
He gives you quite a large tip for your troubles and seems very grateful for your time. What time do you think you arrived back in Fayhaven?
Well, if he started first thing in the morning, he'll probably get back around like 6, 7, like kind of twilight-ish.
Do you go straight home, or do you stop anywhere on your way back?
He'll take the cab straight home, and then maybe pop Bess out of the dashboard, put him in a little vest pocket right here on his chest, and pocket his crystal and just take a little walk to see, vendors closing down their shops. Probably head over toward the Wayward Inn just to have a pint. Not before taking the blueberries and putting them inside his apartment in the ice box. Yeah, the blackberries. He'll handle them with such a reverence. He'll open the little ice box door and set them in very gently and lick his lips a little bit. Just close the door, and then he'll head out
So you head over to the Wayward Inn, and it's very much a pub-style kind of place. You see there's a group of some young people in the corner. They're all watching a game. It's being projected up on the wall. It's actually a game. It's one of the Changelings' favorite game. It's called Catch the Fox, and it's a game where they get one non-changeling, just like a druid or some kind of shapeshifter, to turn into a fox. And then all the changelings have to try their best to turn into animals in order to catch the fox, but because changelings have very humanoid limitations, it's kind of horrific. It's a little bit horrific to watch a bunch of like animal-shaped, fox-shaped humanoids running through like this arena trying to catch a fox. It's very weird, but the changelings love it, and they're having an absolute blast watching it, and all of the locals who understand have like their opinions on it. There's a dartboard and billiards tables. People are drinking at the bar, and you see Winnie is here. She's sort of leaning with her head in her hand. She doesn't seem like thrilled, but you know, she's letting her bartenders and waitstaff sort of take over for the day. She's not necessarily as bubbly as usual. She's not as on top of everything, but she's there. She's awake. She's okay. She's just like, you know, kind of hungover.
Yeah, he'll sidle up to the bar and just order a pint of whatever's on tap.
You see, she sees you and she kind of goes a little pink. And Whitney's small, but she's usually very on top of things. So to see her look embarrassed twice in one day or ever is kind of a shock. And she just goes, "Oh God. Okay, I'm very embarrassed. Thank you for this morning. Give me 1 second." And actually, not just like kind of the regular thing on tap, she actually goes and gets you a pint of like her famous honey mead. She says, "This is one of my best brews. It's on the house. Please don't worry about it. Really embarrassed about this morning. It's not going to happen again. Don't worry about it."
And well, if it does, I'm there.
She goes, "If it does, I am gonna have to rethink some things in my life."
I empathize with that, like.
And you just have like a nice warm evening. The Wayward Inn does have food, so over the course of the night, you may never really ask for anything, but Winnie will just sort of bring you like little appetizers out of the kitchen, and anytime you show any kind of reticence about it, she's like, "Oh, you know how Chef made a couple extra and wanted me to try it, and I'm full, I don't have any more room, so here you go."
He'll have that, like, again, polite smile and just, "Well, I'm happy to help then."
So you just have sort of a nice night here, chatting with a very embarrassed Winnie. You don't see Laurel, which is a little bit unusual, because she's often here in the evening with kind of the other young folks, but it's not unusual enough to be concerned about it. Is there anything else that you know, as you wrap up your night here, that you want to do before you head back home for the night?
Probably just play darts with somebody who might be a regular or something. Just play a game of darts.
Just a straight dexterity roll to see how you do with the darts.
Oh, okay. Dirty 20.
Yeah, you absolutely cream them. Yeah, wow. Yeah, you can see you have the advantage of being small and super fast, and you just, yeah, you kick their asses. You can see the guy's getting like a little riled up about it. He's like, "All right, little raccoon's probably cheating or whatever."
What have I told you about being curious, not judgmental?
And his little group of friends is like a tiny bit riled about it, but like everybody else in this bar knows you, right? They're like, knock it off. You know he's good. Yeah, it's your own dumb fault for betting on a game of darts anyway, you know?
And like if they were betting, like any like winnings from it are simply going to be buying rounds for people. Exactly. Like it's not going to be. He's not going to be taking home any gold or anything or any. He's just going to be like, "Tell you what, if you don't want to pay me, all you got to do is buy a drink for me, for him, for her, for them. Just buy a couple of rounds for everybody."
And he sort of makes this face of like, "I don't know about that." And all his friends are like, "Hey, you know what? You just got that B. Didn't you get that B list like assignment today?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, yeah, you got paid up front. Yeah, you did that today. Yeah, you're paying for everybody." So everyone's kind of like, it becomes like this group thing. Like the tension is cleared very quickly. So you head home after the darts, back up to your apartment. Make a perception check for me.
What do my tiny eyes perceive? That's a 19.
Man, look at you rolling today.
It's my tiny dice. They're good.
You know something right when you walk into your apartment is off. Door wasn't open, windows aren't open, but there's a little, almost like a flame candle or something that is already lit inside here.
He will, tap his pocket and have little Bess just poke his head up, or just kind of set him on his shoulder and just kind of whisper, head on my swivel, boy. And he will just hold his hand up and open the door and ease his way inside. He's not very good at stealth. Should I roll a stealth? Yeah, to see if he's trying to sneak in. That is a 10.
You notice pretty soon right away that the light is coming from the little fireplace in your apartment. It gets cold in the winter and on days where, it gets cold anytime the sun is not in the sky, right? Malachite can retain heat for some time, but you don't have the sun here 2 days out of every 3. So once it's gone from the sky, it's chilly. And before you even walk in, before you can even fully see the room, you hear a voice that is familiar to you. You hear a voice say from the other room, "Hey, Tio."
And this voice, it's the child that I'm thinking of. Tio will simultaneously breathe a small sigh of relief, but also tense up entirely. He'll put his hand back down, take Bess off his shoulder, put him back in his pocket, and hello, Juniper.
This raven-haired child is wearing almost what looks like a cloak. And as you see the firelight on him, it looks like there might be raven feathers that it's made of or that are coming down off his shoulder. And as he looks at you, there's something in his gaze that's much older and more world-weary than just a 6 or 7-year-old boy staring up at you at the floor. His eyes are incredibly pale, and there's just something in that expression. He sort of sighs. He goes, "Why do you always seem so stressed when I come and look at you like this? I try and make it easier. I think I look really nice. I'm just a little kid. That's not supposed to be really stressful at all."
It's more of the association of the last time. Well, the first time, really.
But the first time wasn't so bad. I thought it was kind of nice in its own little way.
Yes, but when meeting under a precedence, kind of sours the situation. What can I do for you, Juniper?
Juniper sighs deeply, and he stands up, and as he's going to walk behind the sofa, a lithe young man with that same dark hair and pale eyes emerges again. "Well, if it bothers you so much, I'm not even gonna bother doing it. I don't have time for face-to-face very much. I try and stay in touch as much as possible."
Yeah, I understand you're a very busy man,
You say man, and he sort of snorts, and he's like, "Please don't insult me. What do you want to talk about? Why am I here?"
I didn't summon you.
"No, but I've been getting missives from Laurel every fortnight. And now I'm hearing for her, 'Oh, you need to talk to Tio. You really need to talk to Tio. Tio's in trouble. Tio is sad.'" She doesn't even know you. She doesn't know you at all like I do. In fact, I probably know you better than almost anyone at this point. Listen, I know if you had something to say to me, you would have just told me yourself, wouldn't you, Tio?
There's not a lot to say, really. I'm upholding my end. I'm doing the work I was assigned.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand, why you're so grim about it. Because I think trying to protect a whole noble race of Fae is a pretty incredible position. Okay, the whole situation that happened in, I get it that you mortals are much more touchy about that kind of stuff. But you've had it nice, Tio. You have a lovely place to live. I've made sure that you are paid properly, haven't I?
Aye.
That little doohickey of a car of yours stays in decent shape because of the parts that I provide, doesn't it?
Aye, sir.
So what is it? What exactly are you lacking here?
He gets visibly crestfallen and just takes a deep breath, and every thought in his brain is just, well, okay. And so he takes another deep breath and goes, my father's birthday's coming up, and I've not seen him for years.
So what? Years? Years is nothing.
To you, he might not have very many left. And if years is nothing, would it be a few days?
And who exactly do you expect to look after your position in your stead while you abandon your charge?
I can't think of anyone. Just want to go home.
And how am I to know that you will come back?
We both know you have the power to summon me at will.
He begins to walk toward you again, and with each step, he gets a little bit shorter. Not a child necessarily, but almost like he gets like a little younger and a little shorter with each step. Almost a little more feminine too in the way that their features present. And they cup your face in their hands. He says, do you hate your life here so much? Laurel says, he didn't ask for this. You asked for his name and he gave it to you. He didn't know any better. Now he's trapped here. And it makes it seem like I'm some kind of slave driver or some kind of horrible person. But I think we have a fairly good relationship, don't you?
With his hands on Tio's cheeks, his brows are very furrowed at this point. He's just like not really trying to get away, but it's very, oh God, don't touch me. And he'll just, it's not even about our relationship. It's about my relationship with my family.
Make a persuasion check here.
19.
I think on a 19, you see something in their eyes, in Juniper's eyes, that is genuinely taken aback. I think, first of all, seeing the discomfort of the touch, realizing that you're not comfortable, that they're touching you, but also the fact that you are not taken in by their charm, that they're an arc fae, is very, very disconcerting to them. And I think because of that, yeah, make an insight check here.
14.
You see a concern in their face right now that you have never seen before as you address this. I don't know that he thinks he's wrong or that he's messed up, but it's more like he's realizing that Laurel's perception of the situation might be shared by more people than he thought. And there's something that's very disquieting to them about this in this moment. You can't tell exactly what the emotion under that is. They let go of you and step away back toward the fireplace. And as they do, they go more into their, I would say, sort of their neutral everyday appearance, once more of this like very, very tall young man. I'll give you 3 days.
3 days there, or 3 days outside the city?
No, I will send you there myself. I'm not about to send you out into the wastes. It's a treacherous journey for you and your little automaton.
So you're going to send me there?
Yes, how else do you expect to get there?
There's a genuine disbelief on his face. Like he is agape at this idea. And he's just, well, yes, I'd love to see them again. What do I need to know about Or they can call me.
They'll call you what everyone else calls you. And you see there's a sort of darkness that passes over Juniper's face here. Laurel and the others say we can trust you. But I know better. They are young and they are impetuous, and I have seen the treachery of mortals for much, much longer than any of them were the twinklings of stars in the sky. So understand this, Tio. I trust you for as long as I can control this situation.
When I first gave you a ride, I did so expecting nothing in return.
And yet you have been paid handsomely for your efforts. And he turns and walks to the door, and sort of almost in the opposite of what was doing earlier, you see as he approaches the door, he seems to kind of look like younger and more in like the child form with every step. But unlike the times he's used this specifically to manipulate you, this seems almost involuntary in this moment, this transformation. And when you do get to the door, he looks very small and looks back at you and says, "You think I don't know what it's like to lose your people? I know what it's like to lose everything. I have lost more people than all of the names of people you know. And the names that I have not carried with me are lost forever. You think it is some kind of punishment that I have your name, but your name will be remembered and kept safe forever. You do not understand what a gift I have given you."
He just remains silent in this.
The boy, Juniper, gives you one last look and says, "Come back soon," and leaves the room once more.
Tio will do that release a breath that you weren't, that, yeah, you didn't know you were holding, just, and like it all, like every last bit will just sigh out so that he just has to hold it for a second and then take in a full breath. And he goes to sit down, but he's not near the couch. He's not near a chair. He just like flops to the floor for a second and just slumps. Like every interaction with his patron is like it just takes so much. And he, until it finally sets in, I've got 3 days. I've got 3 days. See Dad again. I'm gonna get to hug me Ma. I should take half of the blueberries. The blackberries. Or they raspberry? It doesn't matter. I can get some jams from Ink. Maybe take some pastries. Or no, Ma'll want to make pastries. And he gets up off the floor and starts kind of not really rushing around, but like quick walking around, trying to gather things up, realizing they didn't set when those 3 days are. He'll set everything up as if he's going tonight, but then will just stop and place little Bess out of his pocket on the counter and just, I know I need to send him a message. I know I need to ask to hammer these things out. But if Dad's birthday's in a couple of months, that'll give him a little time, right? I'll give him a little time to figure out if he needs to make special arrangements for those 3 days. Or I don't want him to have to trick anyone else to do this. I could also give him a month to decide not to do it. He'll pull out his crystal and just send a message to Juniper to say exactly when Dad's birthday is, and include at the end, I'll drive hard in the days leading up to and the days following. This is when I'd like to go home.
After a moment, you get a response, and it's something that Juniper has never said to you. And now, knowing much, much more about the Fae than you had when you were kind of a young, naive driver here in this city, a few years ago, you understand the weight of the words that you read on your screen. It says, "You have my word and my promise that you may be home for your father's birthday."
Juniper will see on his crystal, for the first time in years, 2 words. Thank you.
And for just a moment, you wait with kind of bated breath for a response. You're sure you have this feeling that somewhere on the other end of this crystal, Juniper has thoughts. But you don't get a response. Instead, for the first time in years, something seems to lift in you. You remember the feeling of soft grass between your paws. You remember the smell of the wood smoke of your home, of the big, bright room in the treetop house that you and your family lived in, with little dividers that you would pull down from the ceiling. The smell of your mom's pastries and watching your dad walk up and down the square helping whoever he could. You remember being just a little pup at a roller coaster helping your father tighten bolts that you knew he would fix after you. That first great rush of going fast, that thrill that you pursued the rest of your life. That sound of the roar of the car in that hole all those years ago. The car that your father asked to keep there as a reminder that you would always make your way back home. You remember all this without forcing it. It comes to you in small droplets. Whatever bond you have with Juniper isn't broken, but it's almost as if the tight fist that was clenched around you has relinquished its grip just a little bit. That there's something of you and the persons who made you coming back. And for the first time you realize you remember the way home. And for the first time in 3 years, with memories of home and your family and your life before dancing through your head, you fall into a gentle, easy sleep.